reminder for those of you who have been on webinars with me before, this is open to everybody. So if you have friends, joint venture partners, or somebody you want to introduce to the community, this is definitely a very good place to start. And today we're going to talk about Power Team. And I do want to recognize that I realize this is kind of intimidating for a lot of new students to start to build your Power Team. And a little bit of refresher, what is your goal? How do you decide on what strategies you're going to get into? And do you have to be in the market that you're living in? Does it have to be in your backyard? And it really comes down to having a proper Power Team in place to scale and in order to invest, not in your own backyard. And I actually think it's a great topic to get started after the annual conference. And I don't know about you, I just got my voice back probably a couple of days ago. I know everybody was chatting when the music was loud during the conference. We finally see a lot of people in person. And even before we talk about Power Team, have you realized we're not doing this alone? We're doing this in the community. And yes, alone we can run fast. I love this quote. By the way, if you follow us on Instagram, this is the picture we put up not too long ago. I think it speaks perfectly to what we're going to talk about today. If you want to run far, we got to run together within the community and also building a very, very strong Power Team to help you run and scale. So it's on autopilot when you have to take care of your kids, whether they're 19 months old or 19 years old. Let's put it that way. And today it's more like a conversation between me and Ryan and all of you. And at the same time, I still have to make my lawyer happy and make sure I cover the basics. And same thing for you. Make sure you do things ethically and legally. So we're just going to have a conversation. We're not meant to be a trained professional such as accountants and lawyers. However, we're speaking to you as investors and how you're going to use the information. When it comes down to reaching out to a licensed professional, you know that they have E&O, they have their aero emissions covered, and they're trained for years and years and years. So everything we talk about here is to build upon your education, and the contents are educational only. I will reference a lot of contents based on our experiences collectively in the team and as investors. So talk to your Power Team member, which is fitting for what we're going to go through today. And when Ryan and I ran through what we were going to cover today, there's a lot of stories and information that we want to give to you today. So talk to your Power Team members, mortgage brokers, accountants, property managers, lawyers. Is there anybody that I'm not covering here on the list? Some of my more experienced TYT alumni, unmute yourself. Is there anybody that I didn't cover right here?
Insurance? Your insurance?
Perfect, yes.
Yeah. And insurance broker's great. I mean, we often, prior to sort of getting into this community, I mean, you would think we have our day-to-day stuff that we would be familiar with, our auto, our home, etc. But, investing is a different game. You want to have coverages on your properties, loss of rents, for example, flood insurance and overland water, depending on what you choose to get into with your business. Perhaps you end up doing project consultation. So like Brooke said, errors and emissions or a liability umbrella, they definitely have the knowledge and experience for that. That's a great one, Donna.
Yeah, and also that reminds that everything is correlated. If you're not able to get an insurance, most likely you're not going to get a lender to give you the mortgage. So a lot of the times you have to make sure you got everything covered and reach out to your Power Team member, making sure everything is lined up at closing, for example. And last but not least, we are here to be your mentor and check your blind spot for you. So make sure you remember that we're here to support you, your real estate mentors. And a lot of strategy coaches are also here to support you. I know some of you haven't chosen a mentor yet. And just heads up, that's also something you should do to have the Power Team member there for you. And the little circle right there, it's actually an old Chinese ancient saying. I kind of put it there to give myself a reminder. And I don't know if any of you read it. It basically just means that you leverage people's intelligence and you leverage people's strength if you're trying to work with a power team member who have the strength but not the intelligence. However, it doesn't really matter. You don't have to be the smartest one. And if you don't have the courage, leverage somebody else's courage. And if you don't have anything at all, and be the one that could lead everybody and put all the power team member together. That's basically what it means. And I love it because that reminds me why we need the power team and what we do as an investors. So put your investors hat on. That's really important. And specifically for today, the topic is about your power team members and how do you scale. And Ryan and I will share with you how we scale despite a newborn at home. And we also have other things to take care of, our love and our passion and being here with you to give back to the community as well. Before we get started, I think it's really important for you to get some clarity. And if you're not sure why you're here, or if your significant others dragged you here, get some clarity. And if you don't know why you're here, think about what's stopping you from taking a step further on your real estate investing journey. Perhaps it's fear. And I can tell you, even right now, I still have self-doubt and sometimes the fear of taking another step or getting into a new market. And I don't know about Ryan, do you feel that sometimes as well?
I mean, there's always different types of self-talk, I guess, if you will. I remember particularly last year, our son was still quite young. We were prepping for the arrival of Lily. So, we weren't necessarily as active in our business as we had tend to like to be. And, you say, oh, geez, we're not making any progress. But you need to reframe things, so to speak. We still had principal pay down on our mortgages every month, fueled by our tenants. I never bank on market appreciation, but we still had our stabilization projects going on thanks to our power team. Those were still moving forward. We just had the odd chat to kind of make decisions on materials and different things. So you just you may not be making new acquisitions at any given point, depending on market dynamics and life dynamics, but once the ball starts rolling, it's always going to keep moving. So you just need to recognize that.
Yeah. So do you feel appreciative that the business is actually running autopilot when you need to take care of business?
It's great. And I mean, I think it's, we're obviously going to delve into it a lot more tonight, but I think it's absolutely necessary, to have those people. I mean, without them, I don't pretend, nor do I want to be, a lawyer, an accountant, a contractor, a property manager. That is a very quick way to burn out. And I don't know about some of the other people in the room, but my thought is I'm not investing hundreds of thousands of my own dollars and more of investors' money to buy a job. Right. I don't want to plunge toilets. I don't want to be cleaning common areas. I don't want to be playing Dr. Phil between tenants. Right. I want the professionals to do that type of stuff. And frankly, I think that was part of what led me to invest outside of my backyard, because invariably, if something is close to you, you're going to want to get your fingers into the pie. So I kind of forced myself to be hands off by going outside of my backyard.
So getting out of your comfort zone, sometimes we have to reframe ourselves from doing that too, like you said. And I think everybody's here for different reasons. Just for some clarity, Catherine, could you run the poll? And these are some of the options. I think I've covered it all. If not, let me know. So take your pick. Pick the main reason that you're here with us tonight. Wow, this is a fearless group. Only one person is here because of fear. So another person want to be motivated today. And most of you are here because you want the support. By the way, OPM, it's other people's money. What about OPT? What do you think OPT is?
Other people's time?
Yes. And what is OPK?
Other people's knowledge?
Exactly. So that is why you're here. And that is why you want to leverage the time and the knowledge of your power team member. And I want to add in one more, OPE, other people's experience as well. And it's important to have clarity. If it's still not clear to you right now and you don't have a mentor yet, if you're new in the community, I think most people here, at least on my screen, are new students or existing students. So if you already have a mentor and it's still not clear to you, I can tell you, even for myself and perhaps Ryan, our main goal will stay there. However, how we approach our goal sometimes is different. We constantly have to pivot. And that's why we mentioned at Trust Your Talent, how many exit strategies do you need to have? The very least. How many exit strategies and how many different markets?
3 strategies, 3 markets.
Ted, thank you. Teresa, thank you. Jonathan, thank you. So yes, in today's market, you need to have 3 different exit strategies. You might need different power team members as well to help you pivot. Perhaps they're your contractors. Perhaps they're your realtors. So in case you don't have a strategy coach yet and you're new in the community, if you just think about it, it's a dream. And if you set a time and schedule it, not just about talking to your strategy coaches, also about when you're going to finish your core courses, when are you going to start to talk to potential mentor match. So don't just sit there. And I know that it's the end of the year. Some people are thinking New Year resolution. I just want to shop until December, then worry about it in January. There's no reason for that. Remember, we kept December free for you so you can catch up. You can watch all the recordings at the same time. I understand that we don't have live classes in December. However, Ryan will start the new year with income property, January 8th, right?
Yes, January 8th, I believe we're going to be kicks off at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Just to kind of help everyone coast to coast, those on the West Coast. It's a bit of a time difference to Ontario, so should still allow them to finish up their workday.
It might be a little late for some people. Regardless, I know you're all going to be pumped and stand up, when you're in a seminar or in a class. If you feel like you need a little bit of energy, that's how I help myself getting my energy up. Stand up or participate. Even just having your camera on, that definitely helps. And for those of you who are still new in the community, we try to keep you engaged. So if you're already a registered student, Mastermind Collection is coming up this Thursday. I know after annual conference, we miss each other a lot, so we're going to keep you occupied. And if you want to share the good news with perhaps your family member, perhaps already some students are telling me you already have people who are interested in investing with you. That's why it's so important. And I see we have more realtors, more mortgage specialists. So Katie, I know you're new and you're a realtor, because we do want to build the power team that are trained and taught the same way so we could speak the same language. So currently we're having more and more power team members joining Trust Your Talent as well. So welcome everybody. And if you haven't been to a webinar yet or a workshop, the next one that's going to be live is going to be in November 18th. So if you just scan the QR code or bring a friend, bring somebody who you think could benefit from what you learned. And if it's not clear yet, like I mentioned, 2 things that stop people from going forward. One is clarity. The second one is not having a strong enough goal. Strong enough why? Because whenever you have obstacles or self-doubt, if you don't have a very strong why and set your goals, you're not going to go forward. And that's why it's so important to have a community right here. So let Ryan go through his story first. You can see why he's so successful, and he's very, very strong why. And Ryan, I'll let you take the stage.
Awesome. Thanks, Brooke. There's a few familiar faces in the room, so it's good to see those familiar faces. But as Brooke has said, it's also really exciting to see the community growing. Again, I apologize that I missed everyone at annual conference. However, that top left picture is exactly why I was not there. We were fortunate to just welcome our daughter Lily into the world on October 18th. So as we were joking before some people got in the room, Well, one, I didn't want to miss it, but I didn't have enough brownie points in the bank to be across the country when my wife went into labor. If any of you know Shafali, yes, she is tiny, but she is fierce. So John is laughing because he knows Shafali. So I felt it best to stick at home, but it was nice to see some of you virtually for the award night. But yeah, for those of you that don't know, my name is Ryan Carr. I am a trainer and mentor with Trust Your Talent. I teach 2 courses for Trust Your Talent Academy. So being business fundamentals, which those of you that are kind of watching the core courses right now, you would see that's in the process of being redone. So just a little bit behind the scenes peek. So that course came to fruition because I do have a business background from Wilfrid Laurier. And then the other course I teach is income properties, multi-unit residential, because that's my jam. That's my core strategy, the one that I have come to love the most, and predominantly because of the passive nature. You know, my wife and I, when we knew we wanted to build a family, we knew that we wanted something that would put money in our jeans every month without necessarily a ton of work. And, you know, a lot of people get attracted to lease options, also another great strategy. We found, you know, when we started to try to build a marketing funnel, it was a lot of heavy lifting for us at the given time. So we chose to kind of build out the income properties. And, you know, why we do it or why I do it, you know, financial stability, without getting too far into it, but you know, I watched money tear my parents apart from a very young age. And, you know, through a lot of self-development, as you'll see, I mean, since university, I've spent $150,000 plus in self-development and mentorship. You know, I believe that you are your biggest asset. And frankly, it is the learning since university, not begrudging, you know, formal education, but, you know, the school of life, I find, gives you the most valuable lessons. And you know, through that, I found out that I had a pretty unhealthy relationship with money, and vowed that I never wanted it to be an issue. So, you know, that's why we hustled our buns off. And, you know, despite my wife and I having rewarding careers prior, you know, I was in the sales game for 15 years and made partnership at the agency I was with, you know, was I mean, and I'll say, you know, I always say, I don't say it to be braggadocious. I say it because I hope it resonates with some people in the room, because different people have different scenarios and situations they come from. And some of us may come from a situation that's more of a heavy set of golden handcuffs, for example, right? So myself, I was about a 300K a year income earner. Very tough security and safety net to let go of, needless to say. You know, my wife was an engineer by trade, far smarter than I am. I will give her full credit. She is the brains of the operation. So by all intents and purposes, most people would say, you know what, Ryan and Shafali could have had a good life. And we could have. However, I wanted to be more present. You know, I lost my dad at 52 to a stress-induced heart attack. And I saw myself going down the same road. In fact, last October, I had a cardiac event. At 38. I'll be 40 in January. So that did a nice job of scaring the bejesus out of me. And I decided that, you know, it was really time to kick things into high gear. And needless to say, March will be 6 years since we started our journey, since we literally were in your seats. And we've been able to replicate our incomes and then some through real estate investing. So if you put in the work, it can happen very quickly. And you can reclaim the time for friends, for family, for giving back. You know, I've been fortunate to contribute to a lot of philanthropic efforts at this point too, and want to take on some more travel. You know, both myself and we want our kids to be students of the world. We think that history and culture is very important, and we want them to learn from that. I'm well on my way for my 40 by 40 rule. For those of you that don't know, my goal was to help 40 people reach financial independence by the time I was 40. Not quite sure if I'm going to get to the 40, but I've made a good dent. I'm currently sitting at 28 with a few months remaining. But like they always say, you know, shoot for the stars shoot for the moon. If you land amongst the stars, then, you know, you've already made a good bit of progress. And I feel very fortunate to have helped as many people as I have. Some of those people you'll see on the next slide. So if we just want to head on over. This is a part of my journey. So, some of my mentees on screen here. I've had a chance to get into the trenches with a number of students within the community, and really create some memories, create some impact, and create some results. Myself, I did start in my backyard, the house on the top there. My wife and I, we started in duplex conversions in Kitchener. And despite being strong income earners, the thing in the residential area is you cap out with the banks very quickly because mortgageability is a thing. And so we decided we wanted to keep going. And so we did enough research to be dangerous. And we came to understand that in commercial residential or apartment buildings, the assets qualify for themselves, right? You take the income approach, so to speak. So all you got to do is find the right building and you're most of the way there. So we made the jump into apartments. And since then, we've continued to grow and, fortunate enough now to have over 250 doors across the country in various provinces and looking to continue to grow. And obviously, going back to what was said on the last slide, looking after my health is also important. So that's a very recent photo, actually. I must admit, it is a little bit inflated. It was after a day where we shot for PRs, so I was a little bit pumped up, but that was just last Wednesday. So I'm affectionately calling that Project Father Figure. I heard a saying that really resonated with me. And it says, I don't want a dad bod. I want to be a father figure. So that's what we're shooting for. I want to inspire the kids. So there you have it. I hope that gives you a little bit of insight into who I am. And really quickly for those of you, so income properties is my core strategy, but I have had a chance to exercise on lease options. I do quite a bit of private lending to supplement and to make sure that none of my money or credit is ever lazy, so to speak. And now starting to undertake some infills and development as well. So versed in a number of strategies and happy to talk to any of you about any of them.
Thank you, Ryan, for sharing your journey so far with everybody. It's very inspiring because knowing that every one of us on the team has different background. So I'm very different from Ryan. When I started, I actually didn't have any income. I stayed at home for 10 years. And my husband is a high income earner. So even with one income, we were comfortably living in Toronto. But I was really looking for something that's going to help us create some wealth. Because Ryan could probably resonate since you've been working for so long. We pay a lot of tax. And the only thing we have left is basically the equity in the house. And every year we were actually struggling to come up with money to contribute to our SP. So I started a little bit later. I know Ryan has a 40-40 goal. I started when I was 40. And at that point, I was thinking, if anybody is willing to show me the way, I'm willing to follow and I'm willing to do it. And I thought, we're actually pretty close to retirement because I think we were already halfway there throughout our working life. So at that time, I felt like, yes, it sounds like on paper, we made a lot of money. We don't have any wealth. So that's my starting point. And I could say the only thing I had, no savings. The only saving we had was the equity in the house, but we didn't know what to do with it. And there's some RSP, but even my RSP is spousal RSP because I had no income. So that was kind of an income distribution, the only little trick that we knew. And I was inspired when I hear other people's story. And I was actually crazy shy. And that's why one of the goals being on the team, besides being an investor, is to be able to speak to everybody. And in the beginning, I actually volunteered to be the event speaker. And I think that really gave me a chance to meet pretty much everybody that comes into TYT. And I actually really love that. And actually, one thing I'm good at is actually building a great power team. I think that's what allowed me to grow really fast in the beginning. So when I wrote my book, my coach was asking me, so how do you actually build your real estate portfolio? I could honestly say that even though I don't feel comfortable in an environment with 100 people, I'm pretty good and I love people. I love to talk to people. So I was able to build a pretty good power team to start. and just doing the same thing as you did. So for me, it was about 7 years ago, I was in your seat. And at that time, there was already some team members, power team members present when I was aiming to get started in real estate and invested in real estate. So I think everything, there's a goal, intention. For me, my goal is to, on average, help one student per month, mentorship, and also by going through events training or being in a community with us. And even if you just want to learn how to get started, I think that's what we're really good at, because that's exactly where we got started. And again, because of the community, my book was sold out at one point because I have so many people aiming to support me. And that's one extra stream of income. My goal really wasn't to, I'm an ESL. There's grammatical error in my book. My goal was really to share my story. And even if there's one line that resonates with you, it's totally worth it, even if you're already investing. So earlier on when I started, my goal was to put my family in a single detached home. I know it might not sound like a lot in some other provinces, but my family and my friends are all in Toronto. And actually most of my side of the family is in Taiwan. So traveling is given. That's non-negotiable. That's how I see my mom, my sister, and people I grew up with. So that's another reason we didn't save much, because every year I'm going home to see my family. And that actually reminds me, I realize that now we're getting older and older every year. It's really important to be healthy, even just being able to travel. So to me, that is my why. And yes, I realize I have a voice, even though I'm short, like Shapali, like funny enough, everybody at Trust Your Talent, the ladies are usually petite. Regardless, I think we have a voice, and together we're a very strong group altogether. And when I put together the pictures, actually, I only put a few pictures of the properties I have, because I realize it's really about the people. It's really about the people that you work with. And I love working with the team, because like Ryan and myself, we were all trained by Tim and Ray. And I heard their podcast the other day. It's funny enough, they were saying that for them is creating generational legacy. They're like the grandparents, and we're already the next generation. And you're going to be our next generation. So they're the grandparents of everybody. And that's the goal. Because if you see the picture, a lot of the team members are already students with TYT. We're the OGs that started from day one. At the same time, I can see this, even you guys are going to be part of the team working all together. So if we're not making a difference in your life, that is on us. I know we can spend the time investing, etc. However, for us, it's the passion project. And we aim to change life one person at a time through financial education. Really, real estate is just a vehicle for you to live the life that you're passionate about. For Ryan, for example, cars, traveling. For me, I love kids, and I love people. And every chance I get to meet more people and have the fulfillment of helping people, to me, that's worth a lot, worth everything. So, if I'm not making a difference into your life, if Ryan is not making a difference in your life, log off. We're in the wrong business. However, if we can even say one thing that happened to hit something that you happen to think about and on the path on your real estate journey, that's really what we're here for. And you think it's about the strategy, you think it's about the income. Take a step back. What is it really about? Everything we do is intentional. Even when we talk about power team, it really goes back to you, the stick man, and what you're thinking, what you really want. And then you look at different buckets of income. Perhaps it's earned income, which is totally fine. I mean, we're also spending time here with you. However, you have the option of doing what you love. If you happen to have the passion for flip and finding properties, by all means, do that. And if you're looking for more passive income, we're going to talk about income properties today. Even though you'll need power team members, no matter what strategy you're focusing on, by the way, there's no one strategy better than the other. It's just what fits your goal or happen to be where you are at that point in time. So same thing for me when I was building my own home. That's very time consuming. However, I got a taste of what infill is really about. So at that time, I did a lot of private lending. Same thing. I didn't want my lazy money to just sit there. And when we talked about being the bank, you have the option of deciding how long you want the money to work for you, etc., etc. However, like Ryan, like myself, you have to know different strategies and why when you put your private money in there, that's going to grow for you. And after you decide where you are, time is very important, how much time you can really devote. And right now, you have to devote your time to learn about different strategies, for example. Then you decide on the strategy. Then you decide on the market and then the property. So Ryan mentioned that you basically invest all the way from east all the way to the west to Alberta right now. So same thing. I'm also investing in the States. And Brian, are you investing in the States too?
Yes, actually, we're already involved in a project in Mesa, Arizona. It was more of it's a short-term rental that we can just black out some dates if we want to go down there. But actively exploring multi's got the radar on in a number of states
as well. So really, we mentioned that you don't have to be in your own backyard. And even though we're in real estate, property is really the last thing you're going to consider. And yes, 3x3, you're supposed to have different strategies and different tools in your tool belt. At the same time, what is going to contribute to your goal? Contribute to your financial goal. I know a lot of us here are relatively new in the group. At the same time, there are also students that have been with us for quite some time. And you understand that there's no one better than the other. It's really where you are, what you're interested in, what you're good at, and everybody is very, very different. However, the point is it's gonna give you what you need to get you to your goals and get to your whys if you dig a little bit deeper. Okay, and I highlighted income properties because Ryan is here with us. We're going to talk about what power team members you have to have on your team to be a successful investors if income property is one of your strategies. So there's a lot of things we could go through, and you can tell us your stories at the end. I do want to hear your experience or what questions you may have. However, Ryan and I went through the list, and here are some of the things you would ask your power team member, right? When you get started to know them.
100%. Yeah, the biggest question, and you'll see it as something that comes up on most of the power team member slides tonight. I think it is super important that any of my power team members have that investor mentality. So that's one of my top questions is, do you invest yourself? Right? Because it really does flip a switch, right? They come to understand our trials, our tribulations, and they look at it through that lens, right? Without that kind of experience or approach, sometimes things that might inherently be simple and important to us might be missed by them, right? So I think that's huge and a question that you should ask any potential power team member, whether it's a property manager, realtor, mortgage broker, anything, right? Another telltale though is going to be how many doors the team manages, and that'll give you some insight because another question that will come up, you should typically say, okay, what's your staff look like? You see another one, value added services, landscaping, snow removal, handyman, obviously property management staff comes into that. So you can correlate that. And if he says, yeah, we're a team of 8 and they manage 3,000 doors, well, that would start me questioning as to how responsive they're going to be to your needs and, more importantly, your tenants' needs, right? Because your tenants, at the end of the day, they're your customers, right? And that's a unique way to look at it, right? You get those old, tired, crusty landlords, which we can be in a position to help out, right? Those people that have tried to take on everything themselves, have burned out, now have poorly managed properties, underperforming properties, derelict properties. We can come in, help them out of that situation, bring in our team and turn it around. But same idea, these property managers can very easily get tired if they don't have the right support team behind them. right? Like we are trying to hire for our business, they too need to appropriately hire for theirs. So I always correlate staff with the number of doors. And there's I have an interesting story there. There's a property manager that some of us in the community will know had built a very good name for themselves. And as such, it led to some pretty explosive growth. And frankly, they didn't scale well enough, quickly enough, properly. And it led to their standard of care really suffering. So much so that some clientele left on their own accord. And thankfully, there were a few of us that were close enough with the principal of that business, myself being one of them, and there's other coaches on the team as well. And I'm a firm believer. There's a couple of my mentees in the room, so they would have heard this saying before, but I love candid conversations, right? I think that those are so crucial in, kind of putting all the cards on the table and hashing everything out. And that was the conversation was, hey, what happened? You were a shining star, and that really led to great growth in your business, and congratulations, and I'm happy for you for that. However, it seems that you kind of lost sight of the prize, so to speak. And they did some introspection. They looked into their business, and they actually ended up firing almost 2,800 doors. The equivalent clientele of 2,800 doors, because they recognized, they do want to maintain that high standard of care, and they decided to let go of those that weren't enabling them to do their job, because it's a two-way street, right? Just like you expect them to help you operate your portfolio, hopefully in an optimized manner, right? With really nice units. I know I'm not in the business to be a slum landlord. I hope none of you are. But you need to play your part as well, right? They are intimately familiar with your chosen market that you're going to be playing in. That's the reason you're speaking to them. So enable them when they say, okay, John, in order for us to get you the rents you're looking for, we need the units to be in this state of repair, right? You need to have these finishes, you need to have these amenities. If you then go and handcuff them and say, no, I'm not putting a dime into that building, but you need to get me top rents, that doesn't make you a willing and capable participant in that relationship. And so this individual, this business, let go of those types of people. So know too that you too have a duty to individuals that you'll be working with.
So Ryan, you were happy with the way the property manager handled it? You never had to fire a property manager?
Yeah, I mean, I know we always say, hire slow, fire fast. And I think that there is some truth in that, right? And that being said, don't be afraid to fire people, right? But do so diplomatically. Don't burn bridges, because you never know, right? What may come around, and if you do need to speak to that individual again in the future. This particular situation, had it been a little bit different, that quite possibly we could have moved a different way. However, the principal of this business was actually instrumental in us landing a big project, a big apartment complex. He helped my phone ring when another deal fell through, and we were able to swoop in. So I wanted to be mindful of that, so that perhaps gave him a little more rope to hang himself with, and thankfully he didn't.
He delivered in the end.
Yeah.
And you also mentioned you want to work with power team members that are investors. If they're not, do you still work with them?
See, that's a really interesting question, Brooke. It depends, right? And some of you have probably heard that already an awful lot of times, right? When you're asking questions, it depends. I think when you are trying to establish yourself in a market, it's important to have people that have some mileage under their belt. that have some experience. So when you're first establishing a market, I think it's the better horse to hitch your cart to, someone with experience. However, with time, I would say, well, property managers, you're probably going to want to have one and put them in place. But let's look at other power team members we'll just probably discuss tonight. Someone like a realtor. I'm not going to have just one realtor in a market, right? I'm not going to have one lawyer either. I'm going to have, probably a corporate lawyer, a real estate lawyer in all the respective provinces for closings. So if I already have one rock solid power team member in a given vertical, and I'm looking to add another one, I might be okay with someone that maybe has a little less experience, because there's pluses and minuses to both ends, right? That individual that has those miles under their belt might have some bad habits that they've picked up along the way, and things that you just have to learn to deal with. I'm sure we've all kind of dealt with those types of people, right? And there's no changing them. Whereas that young, hungry realtor that's just trying to make a name for themselves and come up in the game, there's opportunity to grow with them, grow together, right? And mold them. So I think it really depends. That's a great question.
Yeah, and personally, I do have power team members who are experienced, and also the ones that we basically grow together. And a lot of the times, even when I refer power team members to other people, their complaint is, yeah, they're too busy now. Because when we grew with them, they probably still have the bandwidth to take care of various clients, even like your property manager. So is there at one point you realize, hey, that's kind of a red flag. Now they're expanding too quickly. They're dropping the balls.
Yeah, I think, we pride ourselves, as I said, on operating a nice product. And, I think you and I on the team, we're somewhat fortunate in that we get to visit a lot of the key markets in the country through mentorships. And I've always made a point, whether it's prior or after, on both ends, of tacking on a day or two to operate my own business, and so despite these properties being outside of my backyard, I always do get in the trenches. I always do get my eyes on them, my hands on them. And I'll always come away with a list, right? A follow-up list and pictures. And for me, if I've got to follow up on an item more than, say, 3 times, I really start to get critical. I get it, maybe once, maybe twice, things get busy. There were a lot of people, a lot of businesses and different verticals that were reeling during the pandemic. It was hard to find good people. So I wanted to give people the benefit of the doubt, but that rope again is only so long. And I think, yeah, typically if I've got to follow up more than 3 times, I'm really starting to get critical. And that's where I'll still remain diplomatic, but I start to get a little tougher with my dialogue.
Yeah, and personally, same thing. I look at the response time. Sometimes in the beginning, if I realize they're dragging on and their response time is taking longer, that's usually a sign that something is not right. And I share a story with Ryan that one of my property managers seemed to respond in the way that I figured something wasn't right. And later on, I realized he had drinking problems. And even the way he responded to my question was pretty direct and not really dealing with it. And later on, I found that out because he was sharing how he went through alcohol addiction. So, everybody had to go through life. Sometimes there are signs, then you realize if there are signs and you start to see it, perhaps there's something there. I do want to touch on one more point. And because we're talking about income property, so Ryan and I decided to spend a little bit more time on property managers, because that's really where you start to manage the managers and having your business on autopilot. One of the things we really want to go through, and Ryan, I'll let you speak to that, is ask them to tell a story. So tell us, why do you ask them to tell a story?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I find whether they're the right person or the wrong person, that is always something you'll uncover with time. whether they have the right intent or the wrong intent, is again something you'll find out. And I find they will have a general idea, being a property manager, of the type of questions that will typically come at them. And that's a good thing and a bad thing. It's a bad thing because they can create canned answers for the more traditional questions that are coming at them, and spin things in such a way that you'll hear what you want to hear. And they know this, right? And it's easy to hide behind those canned, rehearsed answers. So I like to ask for what I like to call story time. Tell me a time, or describe a time that you diplomatically dealt with a difficult tenant on behalf of an owner, is our example here. Or, spark them to tell a story. Because part of my background too, I did a double degree at Laurier, so it was business and communication studies. And if anybody has ever studied communication or read any of the books about it, the words that we speak is only a minute part of how we communicate, right? The nonverbal communication is huge. Looking at their mannerisms, looking at their eyes, hopefully if you have a chance to make it a face-to-face meeting or an online meeting, looking at the way they fidget, looking at the fact if they use filler words like or but. All of those can be telltale signs that they are reaching or fabricating, right? Because they don't necessarily have an opportunity to rehearse a story. So I love story time for the simple fact that it kind of puts them back on their heels and makes them have to recount things live now here. And one such example, I asked that very question, describe a time that you diplomatically dealt with a troubled tenant on behalf of an owner, and how did that work out? And one other thing I'll say to kind of preface the story is, yes, we want to come to trust these people as part of our team, an integral part of our team. However, you need to mind your own business. Okay, this is at the end of the day your business. So you do need to be an expert in your given markets. And so I caught this prospective property manager in a lot due to story time. I asked them this question, and they talked about how, well, there was a bit of back and forth, and the tenant ended up proving that there was a disability which prevented them from working for some time, which was what got them behind on rent. So that it elongated or prevented the eviction. But like at the end of the day, we were able to get a healthy increase. And so knowing the market that I was in this instance, it was Winnipeg, I knew that there were rental increase guidelines. And the only way in most provinces there's a way around those set increase guidelines is if you have proof of a large renovation where you've added a lot of value and you have the supporting invoices. And so I asked a follow-up question. I said, wow, that's quite a sizable increase given the same tenant stayed. So what type of work was done to warrant that? Oh, no, nothing. And so I started asking follow-up questions, and that's when the nonverbal, so to speak, started to fall apart. You could see the mannerisms change. You could see them getting uneasy. There was a lot more filler words. They were starting to get tripped up. And to me, that was just a telltale sign that, perhaps they weren't on the ethical level that I would want them to be on. So I chose not to sign a contract with that party. So I hope.
Yeah. So that's a good point about communication. Even when I look at everybody on screen, sometimes when I'm talking and I realize that perhaps not everybody understand what I'm saying, I could just tell from your face, even though people are sometimes too shy to raise their hand. So yes, a lot of the times you can just tell by the non-verbal signs or cues. So that's a very good point. By the way, there's a lot of points on the slide. You can take a picture of it. And we're not going to go through, do you manage 24 hours a day on the call, third party quote, just pass through, or is there a fee associated? These are the questions Ryan mentioned that perhaps they already have can answer and already have a set answer they know how to answer. So these are the things you should still ask to qualify them and just to understand how the business runs.
I just put a book into the chat for everyone. If you're a reader or perhaps you're an Audible user, I like Audible. But What Everybody is Saying, Dave Navarro, and it talks about, all the aspects of communication and reading body language and the nonverbal cues. So hopefully that helps some of you.
Thank you for sharing. And also take raising funds for your business so you can actually practice with all of us at the same time. And moving on to realtors, I realize, yes, we touch upon a few points already when you're looking for a realtor. And we highlighted, do you work with real estate investors? And a lot of the times I realize that what they consider as investors, speculators, etc., might not be the same definition as us. So it's interesting to see, what the realtors would say. And Ryan mentioned, what is your area of focus or specialty? So why would you ask that particular question that we highlighted?
Yeah, I think depending on what part of income properties or what strain of income properties you're going to pursue, it's very important. So most realtors that most of us would know or come to know are going to be more of a retail type realtor, right? And there's nothing wrong with them. They're great people. They can make a great living for themselves, but those that are finding people their forever homes, so to speak, or those stepping stone type homes, more of the primary residences. And that type of realtor versus an investor focused realtor are going to be a very different mentality, and it would add to some of the other questions that are on the screen there. Are you familiar with for sale by owner transactions? Are you familiar with seller financing or vendor takebacks, with double closes, with assignments, with all of these things? That would throw a traditional realtor for a loop more than likely, whereas an investor focused realtor would have knowledge of these and be able to help you write those clauses into your offer. The other thing though, because we choose, my wife and I, to participate solely in the apartment space anymore, that is a very specialized realtor. That same realtor that is used to selling and transacting single family homes will not be able to operate in the commercial space. It's kind of an old boys club, if you will, right? Those that are at the top of the heap in that game, they have spent a lot of time creating that name for themselves. And there's a lot of benefit in finding one of those more successful commercial brokers. And anybody on the team, your mentor, may be able to help with some of those contacts in respective markets. We've been fortunate enough to sniff some of them out. And because especially nowadays with how difficult the market is, a lot of deals are not going to be found on the MLS or LoopNet or those sites, Redfin, etc. It's the pocket deals that are going to be those that present the most opportunity, right? So building those relationships. And it can be a difficult question to ask in a first conversation with a realtor. Hey, do you have any private deals or pocket deals that you can send my way? You're going to be just like umpteen number of other clients on their roster that have asked that question. Frankly, you need to earn that trust. You need to earn that right. But you can preface it, again, with a candid conversation and just say, hey, Bob, let's say it's Bob, just so you know, I have been actively researching this market for some time. And in entering this market, I'm not just going to be doing one or two transactions. My goal between myself and the investors behind me, we're looking at volume, right? We want to be really growing in this market. And if we can build a great relationship, I'm more than happy to transact all of these acquisitions with you. And with time, I hope that we can gain each other's trust and, frankly, put butter on each other's toast. I like butter.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And I think for realtors specifically, just having a conversation, you can tell if they're transactional or relationship focused. And because you want to have repeat business, relationship focus is really important. It doesn't take long before you get into the conversation and realize some people just want to get one transaction done. So when you mention seller financing, etc., something that sound a little bit more complicated, they kind of back away from it. I've seen quite a few realtors like that. At the same time, there are realtors that want to build relationships with you. And when you mentioned specialty and especially multifamily, for example, I found some really good realtors. They come up with amazing marketing material. They have the market, they have the building or surrounding buildings, or they even have packages ready when you start to look at that specific property, for example. And you can just tell how much work they put into it. And again, you want to make sure it's repeat business, right? So a lot of the times, like Ryan, you're involved in a lot of those. It takes some time, right, to find a property and have a transaction completed. And at the same time, even if it's a good gesture, a bottle of wine or something to compensate them for their time. And again, we're dealing with people. So little things like that could really go a very long way.
That's a great point, right? Because there's so many power team members, the property managers we were just talking about, realtors, mortgage brokers, insurance brokers, that you might just have conversations in passing day in and day out about understanding where the market is, where it's going, perhaps trying to do some due diligence on a given property, and it doesn't come through. A nice bottle of wine, scotch, a gift card for a dinner goes a long way to building and keeping that rapport in place. Just something to say, hey, yes, I value your time. I value your expertise. I'm sorry that deal didn't come through. But I wanted to let you know that I value your time. So I wanted to give you a token of appreciation, like you said.
Yeah, and sometimes with some team members, we've been talking for a year, sometimes a year and a half, and we finally found a deal that we could work together, which is totally fine. And I appreciate the patience of the power team member as well. So even if it's not for me, if we continue the relationship, we've been really patient. I'm also open to referrals, right? Sending them referrals and build relationship that way for their hard work at the same time. So anything else you want to add about realtors? I think we touched upon quite a few points.
To go back to your question on the last slide about, hey, do you want someone that has experience or do you want someone young? I think that this is a particularly interesting one. Again, those experienced people, they're going to help you get those cherry pocket deals. But there's a very amazing and interesting dynamic that can happen with working with a young, hungry realtor in this space, in the commercial space, because as you said, you kind of hinted at, there is a lot that goes into trying to make an acquisition and to get a project under contract, a ton of due diligence. So that young, hungry realtor, you can train them, right, to start to do some of the analysis for you, right? Those well-established guys, frankly, they're probably not going to have the time to do it, although they might come with a relatively strong package. But those young, hungry realtors, they can come to you with quite a catered package based on what you have told them your criteria are. So this is particularly an interesting space to diversify, I would say.
And a lot of young realtors, like you said, they're actually interested to see us as seasoned investor, what we're looking for, and kind of learn and grow with us. It's, like you said, a mutual relationship.
And they're not afraid to help you make those embarrassing offers, which is a big, right? Some of the well-established, perhaps crusty realtors, you'll come in with an embarrassing offer, because I always like to say, and there's many of us that say, you want to be embarrassed by that first offer, because if you submit an initial offer and immediately they sign back saying yes, and what would that tell us? Anybody want to take a guess?
Paid too much.
You left money on the table.
100%. Both, yeah. You definitely left money on the table. You could have made much more in the buy, and added to that value add process, right? So you need someone that's okay to submit that, seal the offer for you.
That's a very good point. I think for the commercial space, I do want to touch upon mortgage brokers because we do hear stories or even our own experiences that it's taking longer and more challenging. Loan to value is not as what we expected in a lot of cases. So in that case, how do you find a good mortgage brokers besides the standard can questions that they already have answers for?
Yeah, obviously you're going to want to interview them and see, what their breadth of lenders are. That's I guess one of the questions there. I think, how many lenders do you have access to on average? Most of us prior to getting into this world, we're going to know the Schedule A banks, right? The Red Bank, the Green Bank, the Lion Bank. We don't want to say names. We're not supposed to say names. However, there are over 50 institutional lenders in Canada, right? So we're looking at credit unions, we're looking at Schedule B lenders, stuff like Equitable Banks, something like Canada ICI. Those lenders can be very valuable, particularly credit unions and local credit unions, depending on some of the markets, because some of the major banks, the Maritimes, New Brunswick is one of my major markets. And through the more recent times, as Brooke, as you mentioned, underwriting has really tightened up. So there are some of those lenders that are not comfortable with certain markets any longer. Or if they are, the loan to value you're going to get is incredibly low. So that's where something like a local credit union, someone who believes in and wants to see their local community grow, can be immensely valuable, right? So finding brokers that have access to that, perhaps even have access to monoline lenders. So monoline, for those of you that don't know, mortgages are all they do, right? Traditional banks that we would know, they get into mortgages, they get into lines of credit, they get into credit cards, they get into many, many things. A monoline lender is strictly mortgages. And then beyond that, we have hard money. We have mortgage investment funds. We have pension funds, for example. And the great brokers will have access to those types of funds. Because in the commercial space, in general, notwithstanding even the more challenging times as late, some of you know it does take a little more money to play. Yes, the properties do qualify for themselves. However, if you are looking at a value add opportunity, the chances are out of the box, it's not going to be the strongest financial performer, which is actually going to hurt you on the initial underwriting. So the bank might come back and say, hey, Donna, we're only going to give you 60% loan to value. Versus a residential transaction, you're getting 80 most of the time. So you do need a little more cheddar or cash to play the game and to close on that property. Other times too, if you're really trying to find the cherry deals, you might have to act quickly, right? So I think, did we have something about a multi-step approach on the?
We spoke about that during our conversation. I just want to take a step back in case some students are new. When we say value add, is when we increase the value of the property. So perhaps renovating the property to improve the property, or adding units to it, or building on the vacant land that's sitting on the same property, for example, is to increase the value of the property. So as an investors, we're always looking for a problem to solve. And we also talked about the bigger the problem to solve, there are more opportunities out there for us to add value to the property. However, in the environment today, during that time, are you going to get mortgage or lenders who are going to back up your deal even before you start to renovate the property, or start the renovation, start building additional units, etc.? So Brian, I'll let you explain that. So step by step, perhaps the lenders is going to forward you the funds depending on which step you are in the acquisition and the renovation. And in the end, refinance based on the value you add to it, yes, the performance of the building, so eventually being able to increase the rent, improve the performance.
Right. Yeah. So high level, and we won't bore you to death because I mean, there's a reason that the multi-unit income properties course is, 15, 16 hours of content. So we won't be able to do that tonight. On a commercial level, they take the income approach. So your net operating income, which is your top level income, as Brooke said, rent, perhaps coin laundry, storage lockers, vending machines, whatever it might be, anything that creates income, less your operating expenses, utilities, property management, landscaping, snow removal, not your debt yet. So that your income less your expenses gets your net operating income. That is the number that the lenders will look at. Net operating income and what's called the capitalization rate for the area. Complex formula as to how they come at cap rates. We won't get into that, but needless to say, those are the two numbers. So when you affect your net operating income, you directly affect the value of the building. So if you can increase your revenue or decrease your expenses, it's showing directly in the value of that building. So that being said, it's also how it's valued on the front end on the entry. So as Brooke said, and any strategy, not even just income properties, the more value that you add in the world of real estate, the more money you're going to make. And you don't have to be bashful about that. You make money when you solve issues. So I have had students and mentees that I've had conversations with that say, well, I want to start with something turnkey. And I will always try to shy them away from that because someone else has already done a value add and now they're selling to you for top dollar. And there's no way to create enough additional lift to pull that money back out, because our goal is to try to extract our invested funds back out at some point in the not too distant future to allow us to scale our business out. So that's why value add buildings are so wonderful in this game. So the right mortgage broker can help us with that process because it's going to be a bit of a dog, so to speak, on entry, not going to be a great performer. But if they have a wide range of lenders available to them, say like private lenders or hard money, we can take a multi-step approach. So we can come in with hard money, and this is where our mindset needs to change. Because a lot of us, I remember doing it, the first building we secured in Winnipeg, we bought it straight cash, and it was a hard money loan at 12%. And I remember talking to my mom about it. She's like, are you crazy? 12%? That's insane. It's like, well, no, Mom, because it's still making us a little bit of money, not a lot, but as long as it nets neutral or makes you some money, we got to shift our mindset and look at not how much it's costing us, but how much it's going to make us. Okay, so short-term pain on the entry, higher rate, but quick money. That's the thing with hard money. It can be very, very quick. They can fund in 24 to 48 hours with the right lenders, with the right brokers. Okay, and this is where your exit strategy, which we talked about in the beginning of the session, is crucial. Those type of lenders, before you even buy, want to know what the exit is, what multiple exits are. But the beauty of it is their risk threshold is much higher, right? So they will take a little more risk, but that is reflected in the rate. You're going to have a higher rate. So things like you paint the picture for them. You say, yes, it's a dog. However, here is our turnaround plan. Here is some of the quotes we've gotten from contractors. Here is the timeline. Here is what is supposed to be our after repair value or our stabilized value. Some of the lenders will actually lend to you based upon that stabilized or after repair value, right? Which will help you to get those critical funds needed, not only to secure the property, but perhaps fund some of the renovations or the improvements. Okay. But that money, again, is very expensive. So we want to get away from that scenario as quickly as possible. And that, again, is where the right broker will come in, because they will have the access not only to that lender, but they will be able to help you paint the picture to meet their criteria, but also keep the file moving to those other interim steps. So as soon as you secure the property and start your renovations, you're already starting a file for more traditional lending to buy it, to pay out that lender, right? So you get all your due diligence done, and you say, okay, we have 8 months for this turnaround. And if the answer you're getting from a contractor is 8 months, your timeline should be 12. Always pad things, right? Always underestimate rents, overestimate expenses, overestimate timelines, and thoroughly stress your numbers, because it's when you try to really make those variables walk the fine line, it's not a matter of if, only a matter of when you will get bit. Okay, you really want to stress your numbers. But that is a crucially important role that the right mortgage broker can play, is to help you with that multi-step approach. So close with the hard money, help you to finance not only the property, but some of those renovations, and then start the file, because ultimately for a lot of us, what we will discover, the end game or the end goal is CMHC or an insured mortgage, right? Because there's a lot of great products for optimized properties now. MLI Select comes to mind, if anybody has heard of that. If you can tick the right boxes for their criteria, you can get up to 95% loan to value and 50-year amortizations. Think about what that would do to help you propel your business, right? Pulling money back out or extending an amortization like that is great for your cash flow, right? However, as Brooke said, CMHC is 4 to 6 months minimum right now, right? So certainly not a product that you're going to use on that private pocket deal that comes at you quickly, that needs to be closed very quickly, right? It's more of a future step.
So it's important to have a mortgage broker that knows the step, because I realize that sometimes you have to have the documents ready, your process ready. A good mortgage broker will guide you along the way. Because like Ryan said, if you have to use that private money at 13%, 15%, and it's just because you don't have all the documents ready, you're not prepared, that's going to cost you in terms of holding costs as well. And I found for mortgage brokers who are actively engaging the investors, they're usually better at getting you ready and knowing what's happening in the market, and give you a realistic timeline as to how long you should be expecting the process to end to get your CMHC mortgage, for example. So in that sense, mortgage broker is really important to help you get your process in place.
And technology is great. I can tell you there's probably 3 brokers that we work with on the regular. And again, anybody, do feel free to reach out if you're looking for recommendations. Happy to pass along names and contacts. But a great example, Dropbox, Google Drive, things like that. Every one of those brokers, we have a Dropbox folder with. And whether we have an active project that we're trying to acquire or not at any given time, those documents are always updated. So when the tax season comes around and we get our new notice NOAs or T4s or whatnot, those are uploaded. It's always the freshest document there, so that when we need to act quickly, we're not scrounging to find these things. It's right there. We pull them. It's done. An example, my wife and I, we closed on a property while we were in Cambodia on a yoga retreat one time by using technology. All we had to do was find a cafe with Wi-Fi, and we got things off, and all was good.
And Ryan, you do talk about how to organize as an investor in your business fundamentals too, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So moving along to lawyers, one thing I do want to mention that there are lawyers that specialize in so many different things. So you have to make sure you understand what you're utilizing their knowledge for. Perhaps set up a 3-tier corporation. I know some of you are new and asking a lot of questions about the 3-tier setup. And you have to know who are your real estate closing lawyers, who are the ones that's going to help you set up your estate. And also the ones that help you set up your assignment clause, your joint venture agreements, shareholder agreements. And we highlight the one regarding joint venture agreements, shareholder agreement. For those of you who are new, promissory notes, PN, agreement for sale. And for example, LO, that stands for lease option. So we don't call it rental at Trust Your Talent. Lease option is what we usually use when we talk about lease option or rent to own, which is the street name, or double closing, for example. And Ryan, you have a story regarding the joint venture and how your lawyer helped you?
Yes. So I think there's two power team members in particular, lawyers being one of them, accountants being the other. Get very good ones and pay them well. Again, not how much it's going to cost you, but how much it's going to make you. This will come back long term, right? You want airtight joint venture agreements. You want airtight shareholder agreements. All of your legal documentation. You and I could never even begin to think about all the potential reasons that a joint venture or a corporation may have to dissolve or have divorce clauses or all these different things. They're experts at this, right? I remember my first ever, and this might be shocking to some people, our first ever joint venture agreement, $14,000 by the time we were done for one document. However, now we have an incredible template, right? And all it is names, addresses, numbers that are changing, right? So lawyers and accountants spend good money. So the story, it was one of the earlier properties in our investing career, one of our duplex conversions, and we had gotten in with a joint venture partner. Great guy, really good guy. However, stress does interesting things to people. And he ended up having to go through a very messy divorce and turned into a different type of individual for a little bit of time, turned into a bit of a dink, and decided that he did. He had to get out quickly. He had to liquidate everything because he didn't have proper structure in place. And he didn't want to talk to us. So he had his lawyer send us a bully email trying to scare us and intimidate us out of this property without getting our just reward or what was fair to us. And so this law firm that this individual used was out of Belleville, Ontario, I believe. So, smaller firm. We use a firm, national firm, Siskins. Love them. I've loved them for many years. Multi-practice firm, very big firm, very respected firm. And this is where, again, having great high-powered lawyers for corporate anyway, is important, because all it was a return email from our lawyer with their email signature, and the tone changed immediately. They saw that logo in the email signature and they're like, oh, we're dealing with them, right? And that, to me, if you're in this game long enough, again, it's not a matter of if, it's only a matter of when some sort of difficulty will happen. Right? There will be a lawsuit. There will be some sort of disagreement or dissolution of a joint venture or a corporation. And it's then that you want that pit bull. You don't want that meek lawyer that you've managed to save a couple $1,000s on over the last number of years when it hits the fan. You want the guy or the woman that is going to go to the end of the earth and back for you to make sure that you get what is due to you. Right. So I firmly believe that your corporate lawyer in particular is something you want to spend good money on.
So we always say you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. Again, this is where you don't want to be cheap. Make sure you spend the money and make the investment for sure. And another thing I do want to mention is that even though you think nothing has happened yet, I'd be surprised if nobody reached out to Ryan and asked the contact. And same thing for me. I have a few litigation lawyers contact just in case. And even if you're not using it now, it's great knowing that at least you have it in the back of your pocket if you need to pull it out. Okay? 100%. Yeah. So as for lawyers, and similarly for accountants, we mentioned that, hey, you don't want to be cheap. And you could reach out to your accountants and lawyers to set up your 3-tier corporation. My experience is that, Ryan, you can speak to that as well. For accountants, they're here to make sure we keep what we make. In terms of reaching out to your lawyers, you're thinking of protection. And a lot of the times you have to make decisions, because your accountants might give you advice on doing it the most tax efficient way. And at the same time, how are you going to protect yourself? Your lawyer will tell you so many different things you can do. However, is it worth it? Is it overkill sometimes? So really, as investors, you have to decide what you want to do with your business. Ryan, I'll let you add to that, and also complimentary referrals.
Sure. Yeah. So, and really quick, just we don't need to go back to the slide, but with respect to lawyers, your corporate lawyer and your real estate lawyer, the one that helps you with closings, I would say don't need to be the same and shouldn't be the same. Because frankly, that big, powerful law firm that you're using from the corporate side of things is probably grossly overpriced to do real estate closings with. You just need a simple, smaller law firm to help you with that type of stuff. And of course, someone that's licensed in the appropriate province, right? So if you're going to invest out of province, your corporate lawyer might be in Ontario, and some of the larger firms will probably be licensed coast to coast. But those that are specific to real estate closings will very likely not be licensed in every province. So you need to find one in your appropriate province. So sorry, yeah, with respect to accountants, again, another power team member you want to pay well. And the thing that I found, I mentioned that, we were fortunate to come from successful careers, I guess, or higher income earnings. And that can sometimes, anybody played cash flow? A game? Show of hands? No? Great
Small
game.
percentage.
Highly suggest that you do, because it's funny once you gauge people's reactions, because you draw a card for your occupation at the beginning, and some people, they'll draw, say, janitor, and they're like, oh man, what? That's actually a good thing, because you think of janitors don't necessarily make a ton of money, right? So that specialized surgeon occupation card that makes $400,000 a year, they're going to have a heck of a time getting out of the rat race, so to speak, because the likelihood is, let's be honest, most of us, the more you make, the more you spend, right? The lifestyle creep starts to happen. But when you put proper structure in place through a great accountant, this was one thing I found out firsthand. There reached a point where I was desperate to get out of my sales job and to ask the other partners to buy me out, predominantly spurred by the fact that I had a cardiac event. I was like, okay, that is the straw that broke the camel's back. So really started to dive into it and discovered with the proper corporate structure and the resulting tax rates that you pay versus an individual, you need to make far less to bring home the same amount of money, because it's not how much you make, it's how much you keep. Okay, keep that in mind, because individuals, we pay tax on the top end, on what we earn, right? It comes off that paycheck right away, and we see it. Corporations pay tax on what's left, and that's the magic, right? Because you have income coming in, but you also have expenses offsetting that. And those taxes are only filed at the end of the year. So when you get an accountant that can help you manage that properly and can also set up proper structure, you might be going from a 45 to 50% tax rate down to 12 to 15%. That's over 30 cents on every dollar that you get to keep in your pocket, which means that you're keeping a lot more and you have to make less to lead the same type of lifestyle.
And when I started to set up corporations, my feeling is like, oh my God, we could do that. And we're basically deciding on when I'm going to take profit, when I'm going to, if my personal income tax is low that year, I can decide on when I'm going to send profit to my shareholder, which is ourselves. So you have a lot of room to decide on what you're going to do with your tax structure. And that's what you do with an accountant. We're giving you an examples. However, make sure you consult the professionals to do it. But yes, we're doing it legally. And yes, you can do that. You can pay 12% instead of perhaps 35, 45% when you're a high income earner. The only thing we can do is perhaps RSP. And even that, by now, there are a lot more efficient ways of utilizing your RSP and putting money towards a retirement, or have a game plan for your retirement as an investor. I do want to touch upon one more point is complementary referrals. So often, even when we reach out to Katie, I'm sure a lot of your clients do that too. They will ask you, do you have power team members that could help up with the transaction? For example, they ask you, are there banks that you work with that could help us with financing? Do you have inspectors that you work with, for example? So personally, sometimes I look at it just to see who are you associated with. And by the way, it's not a very big community. A lot of the times you'll bump into the same power team members. You kind of have an idea if they work with certain power team members, what kind of work ethics or how do they work. You kind of know just by the vibe that the kind of people that everybody works with. So very important in a community that you get referrals. And I also want to see, do they actually have referrals, or do they have people that work in the industry for a period of time that are actually good referrals? Anything else to add, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always a great question to ask any potential power team member that we're interviewing, right?
True.
Because there's going to be people that they have spent a lot of time building their own reputation, which is what led us to them in the first place. And the chances are that they've built that business with some similar power team members that we're looking for. And so at the end of the day, in any business, in particularly in real estate, people want to do work with people, right? With people they like and trust and know. So if they already get along with what's going to be the accountant you're likely hiring, if you hit it off swimmingly with them, chances are that that lawyer or that general contractor or whomever that is a client of theirs that they love will probably be of similar mindset, similar value. So it's a great question to always ask any potential power team member that you're interviewing.
And another good thing about them being investors, I'll give you an example because we were talking about family trust. So I went to one of the accountants and asked, you have kids, did you set up family trust? Why and why not? Or you go to a realtor, you're also an investor. Is this the kind of deal you would invest in if they're in the same shoe? So that's a good question to ask. And even for your estate planning lawyer, for example, they're very similar to me with 2 kids, for example, and they're looking to build wealth. They're looking for tax efficient ways of protecting their legacy. So I would ask them, so what do you do yourself? And you're an investor and you're actually an expert in this. So in that situation, what would you do? Okay, I think that's always a good question to ask. And again, just to have a conversation to see how they normally would answer.
And I think that accountants in particular, I mean, a lot of us, I would imagine, maybe a chance to show of hands again, how many of us are doing this to create some type of legacy for our future generations? I sure as heck know I am, right? So they can help us to protect and ensure that that legacy moves on and transitions smoothly. Things like family trusts and whatnot. You know, again, certainly have a conversation with them about the more intimate details, but there's things like capital gains exemptions, right? And one more recent conversation I had, I believe it's as much as $900,000 per individual that's in the trust. So you think about it, you know, myself, my wife, 2 kids, that's $3.6 million of capital gains exemption. Again, not what you make, but what you keep. Right? Those capital gains, or a nice portion of them, would have otherwise gone to the government without the proper structure.
Yeah. And again, as your life situation changes, for example, Ryan has a new baby. And for me, my kid is starting to date. Then I'm going to think, okay, once they get married, how are we going to protect her wealth? So again, your life situation always changes and you're going to look at different ways. So keep in close contact with your power team. And, you know, things like how much capital gain exemptions or, for example, in creative financing, what's the minimum now, updated, that you need to have separate lawyers to get into one transactions. So as investors, we're in the trenches. So we give you the most updated information. At the same time, your power team members are actively dealing with so many different transactions every day. So definitely they're part of your business. So I think when you speak to a power team member, it's very similar to if you're still working, even when you're hiring people. And you want to have people who are highly efficient and you can trust them. However, there's a point when sometimes, like Brian and I mentioned, they get too busy. So for me, I'd rather work with people who are not very efficient yet. However, there's trust. There's trust that if anything happens, they will have my back. And if we want to grow together, they're in it. They're going to grow all together with me. So I have power team members that started new and they're very big and very busy now. I'm glad to see them succeed. At the same time, everybody starts somewhere. So I love to work with people who are highly efficient and somebody I can trust. However, for me, trust is so important. So I don't mind starting with people who are willing to learn, who are coachable, who I can trust. That little chart there, just to remind ourselves, for me, that's very important. When it comes to building a community, building your wealth, and have the people there that can help you. So before we end today's session, I really want to share this with you, because as we were preparing the conversation today, I realized that when I speak to students, I know it's the end of the year and people are thinking that, okay, things are going to slow down. I want to take a break. However, I think at any point you have to understand time is your most valuable asset. Even if you're just doing a little bit during this time until you're in the live class with Ryan, there's still a lot going on. You can watch the recording. At the same time, I do want you to look at your goals and look at why you're here. And we give you definition of financial independence and financial freedom. I do believe that it's about options, about choices. So we can do whatever you want to do with whomever, however, and particularly whenever. So I want to share this clip with you.
I ask how much money you have in the business.
I put about 630,000 into it.
Wow.
That's a lot.
But because you're a royalty guy, you don't need the money, right?
630.
Why do you need a shark?
Your most valuable commodity isn't your money; it's your time. You can always make more money, but you can't make more time. And time gone by is gone forever. I don't have it in me to build another company. My time is past. My main reason for being here is to leave Kenzo in good hands. And by that, I mean with successful, smart, honest, and ethical people like yourselves.
Wow. I love you, baby.
I see a few smiles on the screen, and I think it resonates with me and Ryan particularly, because Brian, how many years do you have with your dad?
18.
18 years.
I lost him at 52, which was, almost 22 years ago.
Wow. And for me, it's when I started real estate investing. So probably the first or second year after I started. And I thought, because my parents put me through MBA. So I thought they might be thinking, why are you spending more money to learn about real estate? And surprisingly, my parents were actually very supportive. And they said, okay, if you want to get into this, you might as well get educated. So I have 42 years with my dad. And my father-in-law recently passed away. And my husband had 48 years with him. However, I think no matter it's 18 years, 42 years, or 48 years, it's never enough. So your time, again, is your most valuable asset. So despite of what we were talking about today, really it's about leveraging other people's time. So you can shorten your learning curve. That's really what is it about. Again, if there's no clarity, I think before the year end, you owe yourself some time to get clarity. Either speaking to us as your mentors, or speak to the strategy coaches if by now you're still not clear about where you want to be, or you just want to clarify how your path on real estate investing should be. Like a few things I do want to share with you. If you want to run fast, you can run alone. However, if you want to go far, go together. So we're all here to support you. So we can all run together. Even though you think we're here to help you, at the same time, you're giving us an opportunity to give back. So we're all in this together. And again, we mentioned this so many times. It's not about how much it costs you. It's about how much it makes you. In terms of money, and in terms of additional time you can use elsewhere. So your network is your net worth. And how many people are on screen today? 24 so far. And if you want to see us in person, in January after the workshop, we're going to have TYT Connect. And I know that some of you are in BC, so there's going to be an ugly sweater party. You're definitely welcome to join. And in Toronto, I think there's another one coming up because we're not just going to have BC people having all the fun. So we're going to have something happening in Ontario as well. And if you want to share the wealth, share the good news with your friends and family. Let them know to start with the workshop. And even today, the seminar is supposed to be for people that are still new to the community. And I think it's also a very good starting point for students who are just on board, because a big part of the mentorship, a lot of the time is what, Ryan? We build a power team with our students, regardless of where they want to go in the market.
Yeah, power team, uncovering opportunities and finding the ways to really uncover great opportunities, not just by combing MLS, LoopNet, things like that, having the right conversations. And depending on your strategy, one thing we often do with in mentorship is perhaps have some conversations or some appointments with the city, for infills or for creation of another building in that multi-complex, or some extra land with it. So what are all the requirements? What are setbacks? What are your infrastructure requirements? All of those types of things. So they're very intense days. There's a few people still left in the room that can attest to how intense they can be. But we aren't afraid of it. And frankly, I don't know about you, Brooke. I know that it energizes the heck out of me.
Oh yeah. So I see Vince in the room. You have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on what you were saying, Brooke. I see a lot of familiar faces in the room, and a lot of you guys have been to the workshop before. And specifically, I'm looking at Scott right now too, because it was life-changing for a lot of us attending that workshop for the first time, because you start to see the community, you start to see the energy, and you see the possibilities of what the workshop had started you on. That's the journey and the path that has set you off into this new direction, and we're all in it together. So make sure you do bring friends and family, because how hard it was the very first time stepping through that door. So yeah, share the wealth, guys. Share the wealth.
Thank you, Vince. And we're actually pretty much right on time. I'm going to open the floor for any questions or input you may have regarding the session today. Donna, I'm going to ask you to volunteer because you're muted.
Sorry, did you say me?
Yes.
Okay, good, because I do actually have a question.
Oh, good.
So I saw that for the accountant, you mentioned a 3-tier corporation setup. Is that when you're first starting out, is that something you should start with right away, or is it, 1 or 2 is good enough? I'm just kind of thinking about like the corporate filing taxes and also the cost to set up the corporation. If you haven't done anything yet, is that something that you should incur right away, or is that something that can kind of wait as you go along?
Ryan, you want to answer that?
Sure. Yeah, and great question, and one that comes out very often. We hear a lot about that in the business fundamentals tutorial. And I think that the one that you can probably leave by the wayside, in my opinion, would be your management company initially. Traditionally, the management company, which is part of the 3-tier structure, well, in the eyes of the CRA, it needs something relatively significant to manage to justify its existence, right? So I wouldn't necessarily incur the cost for the initial setup. Obviously for the recurring T2s every year, right? The corporate tax returns, all of that. The ones I would focus on would be your holdco, because that's where your asset protection is going to happen, in addition to your favorable taxation, right? Because one thing we talk about, I won't go too deep, but when you're setting up your holdco, obviously yourself and your husband I would suggest your accountant would probably suggest that you have different share classes, right? So no different rights, right? But perhaps you're class A, he's class B, and that allows you to income plan. So as Brooke said, you know, if you're still planning to stay in your jobs, maybe for a little bit as you scale out the business, you know, one of you may have a better year than the other, or whatever dynamics happen, you can declare a dividend to the one share class that's in the lower tax bracket, bump it up a little bit, and plan that way. So I think your hold co is definitely one that you'd want to look at, and then your real estate co. Right away, if you're looking to kind of be an eager beaver and get things moving, I would say get the hold co in place, and then a real estate co with a good lawyer or accountant. Frankly, corporations can be formed in 24 to 48 hours, right? So one thing you'll learn in any of the strategy courses is when we're writing an offer, we're going to want to put an assignment clause in there, right? So that gives us the ability, whether it maybe gives us another exit. If we end up not getting financing, we can't execute, well, let's try to wholesale it, or maybe a better opportunity comes along. But it also gives us the ability to assign it to an as yet to be formed corporation, right? So you write the offer in your own name, and then you quickly go and set up the real estate co under the holding company in order to secure that property, right? So there's ways you can stage it, like you said, to shave the finances and keep the expenses low. But I'd say hold co first and foremost. Real estate company when you're ready to make an acquisition, and then after you have a little bit of portfolio, then maybe you look at the management company. In my opinion, again, you know, probably have some candid conversations with your accountant and your lawyer for that, but that's just leveraging from my experience.
Yeah, we did speak with an accountant today that was referred to us, and he was great. He did mention a lot of the things that you just said as well. And what I did find was interesting is that we were talking to him about shareholders. We have 3 daughters. We wanted to also include them, you know, maybe so we could take a shareholder vacation to do an AGM or something like that. That was very appealing. So but then he did say that my youngest, who is 17, she wouldn't be able to be included as a shareholder until she's 18. So I did find that really interesting. And then we also did talk about, you know, setting up the family trust and stuff. So it was great to hear a little more clarity from you as well earlier. So
yeah, I mean, another option you might want to maybe circle back to them on is a family trust at the top. Right?
Yeah, okay.
Just simply having them as shareholders, you know, that's another way to accomplish things.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And just one thing to add. So Ryan, thank you. That was actually a very good explanation of how you should consider it. And also, I think a lot of the times people set up the corporation not having a business in it or not knowing the strategy. Are you likely to just hold the property, or are you likely to actually be active? That's also something you want to consider as well. So yeah, it goes back to, okay, what are you planning to do with your real estate business? Anything else? Any other questions in the group? No? If not, I'll let you go. And thank you for staying with us if you're in the East Coast, particularly. Okay, thank you, everybody. You know that we're here to support you. Any questions, let us know. Ryan, anything to add?
No, just thank you everyone for spending some time with us tonight. Again, exciting to see some familiar faces, but particularly exciting to see the community growing. And I look forward to having you all kind of experiencing firsthand and figuring out what we think makes us so special. So welcome and thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Ryan.